The Bible starts out in Genesis chapter 1. That's not hard, is it? And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 28, this is what is said. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And watch verse 28. God blessed them, and God said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28, God unites man and woman, husband and wife, and the very first thing he does is he blesses man. The very first blessing of the Bible on mankind pronounced was husband and wife reproducing through their marriage union and through their sexual union the image of God on the face of the earth. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. God was not talking about the stork dropping off a baby over at somebody's house. God was talking about the marital union where husband and wife would come together sexually, and as a result of coming together sexually, God would grant us the very first purpose of sex in the Bible. The very first purpose for sex in the Bible was procreation. The very first purpose was procreation, the reproduction of God's image. So what God says is, here's the real blessing of sex. The blessing of sex, please understand, I'm not trying to be crude, is not an orgasm. The blessing of sex is 9 months after you and your wife have conceived that baby and brought that baby to full term, and God is allowing you to raise that baby to be an image bearer for him, one that would reflect him, resemble him, and rule for him in the earth realm. That's the first purpose of sex. So every day you see your child in the face of the earth growing from 0 to however old they are, you are seeing the blessing of sex. The original blessing of sex was purpose-driven, not pleasure-driven. Listen to me very carefully. Our culture, when you walk through stores, they have all these magazines about 25 ways how to have the best sex, 13 ways how to have multiple orgasms in 2 seconds. They have all these kind of things in all these magazines, but nobody has in a magazine how to raise a child to the glory of God. And what God said in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28 is that I have created man and woman in my image according to my likeness. And I want them to represent me. I want them to reflect me. I want them to rule for me. And I want you through your relationship to raise up an image bearer for me. I want you to raise up a child that would reflect my image on the face of the earth. This is Genesis chapter 1. God is already talking about sex. We do not get out of the first book of the Bible, the first chapter of the Bible, and God is talking about sex. Now in Genesis chapter 2, what does God do? God creates man from the dust of the earth. Then he takes a woman out of his side. He creates his wife. Now notice this. He takes his wife, and God tells him to rule with his wife over the animal kingdom. And then he brings her to him, and the Bible says in Genesis 2:24 that the two would become one flesh. So now you have your second purpose for sex, consummation. Consummation, that the couple would consummate their marriage via their sexual union, and that they would come together and the two would become one. So now God has given you in chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Genesis 2 reasons for sex. First one, procreation. Second one, consummation, to bring them together in a marital covenant.